No, this video is not a joke. A lot of people throw the word alpha and beta around and have no idea what it actually means. The term alpha, whether it be referring to a male, female, or anything else, is a phrase that is often misunderstood by people based on what they've heard or what they've seen and don't really understand that the phrase alpha is actually something from humanistic psychology. It's actually a lot deeper than people realize. If you look through the original 42 volumes of Akira Toriyama's Dragon Ball manga, the main character Son Goku exhibits various traits that would qualify him as being a self-actualized person. And on this edition of the critically acclaimed Dragon Ball In-Depth here on Geekdom 101, we're going to analyze Goku's behavior throughout the entire manga and show and explain exactly why Goku is an alpha. So in order for me to properly explain why Goku is an alpha, you have to look at the actual definition and meaning behind the phrase. As I said in the intro, a lot of people throw the word around and have no idea what it means. In fact, there's even people who call themselves alpha who are, quite frankly, not even close. The origin of the phrase really started in the animal kingdom first, and then it actually became something that was expressed thoroughly in evolutionary psychology. There is a science behind being an alpha, which we're going to talk about here in a second. But the term alpha typically was used to describe the societal structure of certain animals in the animal kingdom. Certain animals that ran in packs like wolves and coyotes and lions and even some forms of apes always had or frequently have alpha males to lead the pack. Typically, the alpha males in these animal structures were the strongest and most powerful physical specimens of the group, and at times would have to defend their status by fighting other males, oftentimes fighting them to the death to prove their dominance and to prove that they're worthy of leading the other males. And although that may seem a bit barbaric for human standards, at one time during the hunter-gatherer era of humanity, we also practiced somewhat similar things. But in the modern era, when civilization became, I guess, more civilized, being an alpha wasn't so much about the physical prowess of a male, but more so the social, financial, and at times political prowess and political power of the alpha male. Now, this is a very barbaric and archaic way of looking at things, and animals don't really reflect human beings because even though human beings are a form of animals, we have, of course, the ability to think at a higher level than many species across the earth. So to me, I feel like the best way to describe what a modern day alpha is in a world that shouldn't really be about violence, even though at times it is best described and explained by the work done by researcher, psychologist, and philanthropist Abraham Maslow. Abraham Maslow was a very wise man and perhaps known best for what was referred to as the Maslow hierarchy of needs. And this pyramid structure is really one of the most referenced and one of the most influential pieces of psychology and science in the 20th century. It really is remarkable what Mr. Maslow did, but essentially in the hierarchy of needs, he discusses how human beings have a natural need for certain things, and the bottom of the pyramid reflects things that we all need to literally survive, like air, water, and food. And then the conditions of life improve the higher we get to the pyramid when we find things such as respect, love, admiration, financial success, and things of that nature. And as you climb the pyramid in your life, the idea is to eventually reach what is called self-actualization. To me, Abraham Maslow's humanistic theories of self-actualization are ones that are very real. They apply to the real world, and they actually also apply to fiction, specifically Dragon Ball, because these characters, although not real, are a reflection of how human beings in the real world think, act, and adjust to whatever problems may come to them. Humanistic psychologists, many of them influenced by Maslow, believe that every person, male or female, has a strong desire to reach their full potential, to reach the highest level of the pyramid, which is self-actualization. And of course, to get to that power, you have to break your limitations. Sounds quite a bit like Dragon Ball already, right? But it does apply in the real world. Examples of people who are self-actualized are people who have made a change in the world positively, or those who influence those around them in a positive way to create good outcomes for his or her loved ones, or even strangers who are just in the vicinity of the person. For example, people like Abraham Lincoln, people like Steve Jobs from Apple, people like John F. Kennedy. These are considered to be self-actualized people because they have changed the world in a positive way and carried themselves in a way that was inspiring to many people and sparked the minds of many even long after they have passed away. And to me, that's a very important thing when it comes to figuring this out and when it comes to all of us as humans eventually reaching our own level of self-actualization. We may never have the fame and fortune of some of these guys like the aforementioned Steve Jobs, and we may never actually change the world entirely like Gandhi, for example, another self-actualized person, but just us existing and being self-actualized, we can influence our own communities, not just on the internet, but also in the real world and make the world a better place. Essentially, that's what self-actualization, aka being an alpha, is the truest definition of what these words mean. Now, obviously, for many of us, it takes us many, many decades to get to this level. A lot of psychologists have spoken about how you can't truly reach self-actualization until you're in your 30s or 40s because during your teens and 20s, you're still kind of maturing and growing up and making mistakes and learning about the world. However, there are some prodigies out there who do it at a very, very young age. But most of us, it takes time. But it's funny because when it relates to Goku, you can look at the Maslow theory of what an alpha male is, or an alpha person that is, or you can even look at the original Animal Kingdom definition, and they both kind of apply because he is the star of a shonen manga, a guy who gets into fights very frequently, wins some, loses some, but always wants to fight and always wants to better himself and better his powers physically as well as mentally. He thirsts for knowledge on how to become a better fighter because that's what he loves to do, not just because it's his own hobby, but because his blood, the blood of a warrior race, flows through him. But Goku is still alpha enough to not see his enemies as being beneath him. Goku has many times spared his enemies, sometimes not very intelligently, but he has spared them and given them a chance to survive and or escape. And to me, that truly shows a very big part of being an alpha, and that is being forgiving and understanding that sometimes people go down the wrong path in life and make mistakes, and it's never a good idea to hold grudges or to just kill them for no reason like Vegeta and other characters did in Dragon Ball. Speaking of Vegeta, that even though Team 4-Star makes jokes about Yamcha being a beta male, if you actually look at what the self-actualization pyramid states and research on humanistic psychology, Vegeta is actually a beta for most of Dragon Ball Z. He's always obsessed with surpassing Goku and thinking about what he's doing. He's always making boneheaded decisions. He's always very selfish. He's not really a person who at times cares about anybody but himself, which of course is part of being selfish. To be real with you, Vegeta was beta throughout most of DBZ, and some Vegeta fans might not want to hear that, but it's true. Now, when it comes to the Buu arc, when he finally realizes that the grudge between him and Goku is worthless and that he really shouldn't hate Goku and that he realized that Goku was better than him for a reason, that's when Vegeta truly becomes an alpha. And all throughout Dragon Ball Super, Vegeta is an alpha. But in DBZ, the dude was not alpha whatsoever. He had a lot of issues. And as the series went from Z to Super, Goku remained alpha because the principles of Goku's character as far as how he approached the world is completely adjacent to Maslow's theories of becoming self-actualized. You know, he put together a personal development plan. He's always trying to improve himself. He cares about his friends. He cares about his family despite him doing some selfish things from time to time. He cares about becoming a better person. And more importantly, he's willing to forgive his enemies. And because of his natural charisma and his innocence, Goku is able to make friends out of enemies. We see it time and time again in Dragon Ball, in Z, and even in Dragon Ball Super. Ten Shinhan, Piccolo, Vegeta, 17, 18, even the reincarnation of Majin Buu would all become friends with Goku, even though Oob wasn't really his enemy. It was a reincarnation, not so much him being evil. But even in Dragon Ball Super, you have characters like Hit, who didn't even know who Goku was whatsoever, but kind of grew to respect Goku after their fight. Not saying that they're going to be buddies or anything, but there is that mutual respect there. Same thing with Jiren as well. Jiren learned from Goku, just like how Goku learned from Jiren how to surpass his limitations and become who he was born to be and become the best version of himself. Goku has so many traits of being self-actualized that it's not even a question that this guy is alpha. Now, when it comes to the different qualities that Abraham Maslow describes in his writings of being an alpha, not everybody can check off all the marks. In other words, we're all flawed people, and alphas really know their own flaws. They have a lot of self-awareness of who they are, and they know that they're not perfect and they make mistakes. So being an alpha does not mean that you're not going to make mistakes or, let your temper take over, which happened to Goku a few times, or maybe even be rude to people. It just happens because we're human beings and we're, by definition, unbalanced. However, in Goku's case, he tries his best to always be balanced and to approach every battle with a sense of competition, and friendly competition too, because when Goku loses a fight against an opponent who is not really inherently evil, he really doesn't get mad. He just says, okay, back to the drawing board. Let's see what I can come up with for the rematch. That's Goku. That's how he is. Even as a child, when he battled against Ten Shinhan in the finals of the 22nd Tenkaichi Budokai, he lost that fight due to a technicality, but he didn't get mad at Ten Shinhan. He didn't want to hurt him. In fact, he went out to lunch with the guy right after. So it just goes to show that Goku, even though at times he did, especially during the Red Ribbon arc, kill a lot of people, he's not a guy who wants to go out and kill, even though he has the power to do so. It's like Uncle Ben said, with great power comes great responsibility, and Goku is not the kind of guy who will use that power for evil, unless you're, of course, Goku Black, but that's not Goku. So some of the things that Maslow talks about with being an alpha or self-actualized is being honest with yourself, having a good desirability and benevolence of a person, having wholeness, interconnectedness, simplicity, organization, structure, being and feeling alive, being unique, feeling complete. That's how Goku is. Even though competitively he wants to improve, Goku as a whole is not a guy who goes out looking for trouble. Trouble comes to him, and that's kind of how it's always been in Dragon Ball. Contrary to what many people believe who have to really read up on this, being a big, strong, tough guy does not mean you're alpha at all. That's not what it means. Being a bully does not mean you're alpha. In fact, by definition, being a bully, a troll, someone who harasses people, someone who talks trash, that actually makes you beta. That does not make you alpha at all whatsoever, because those kinds of things are triggered by defense mechanisms that are triggered by your own fear. In other words, you're a coward if you behave in that way. But Goku doesn't really do that. Oftentimes in the series, he shows an incredible amount of confidence without coming off too cocky. When he fought Recoome, he knew that he had surpassed pretty much the entire Ginyu Force, and he gave them a chance to run away. They didn't, and they paid for it. Same thing goes for Frieza. Despite everything Frieza did to this man, Goku still gave him a second chance. Now, some of you might sit there and say it was a bad idea, and really, it kind of was dumb because Goku was naive enough to not understand how evil this guy was and that he needed to be put away. But it just goes to show that Goku has no maliciousness, dude. He's not a bad guy at all. He's not perfect. He's been selfish before. He's also been very unselfish, but he's definitely not a malicious entity. And maybe he would have been had he not hit his head. That depends on what version of the story you're reading and what you want to believe. Abraham Maslow based his entire psychological theory of self-actualization on the works of Albert Einstein, a person who literally changed the world. And while it would be naive of us to compare a manga character who's not even a real person to Albert Einstein, the reality is that Goku did change the world because Dragon Ball is one of the most popular series ever and has inspired many people to lose weight, to become better, and help people through depression. It's really a powerful anime/manga. And again, I am in no way comparing this little cartoon comic book to a real life hero like Albert Einstein or Martin Luther King or any of these guys. But within the world of Dragon Ball, Goku did save the world several times. So in that universe, he's definitely on their level, I would say, within that universe. And even in our world, he's somebody who's inspired us despite not being real. So again, not comparing them, but it's another brick on the building that I'm building here, proving that Goku is indeed an alpha, a self-actualized male. I encourage all of you to look into Abraham Maslow because his works have changed my life and made me view life in a completely different way. In fact, Maslow himself was alpha and self-actualized for thinking of this. And I'm always very intrigued by humanistic psychology, and I feel like it's powerful and truthful, and I think it fits in the world and makes a lot of sense. I hope you enjoyed this edition of Dragon Ball In Depth. A little bit of a deep one here. These are the kind of videos I love to make, and I want to make more of them. Thank you for watching. I appreciate it so very much, and I hope you learned something. Thank you, and I'll catch you down the road.